you can always join me there. You can always reach me at drpaulholisticscience.com, and you can always reach me on and see the YouTube channel at Dr. Paul Dyer, Grandmaster, on my YouTube channel. But we're getting ready to have a great guest here, and I love having guests because to me it's about bringing families and people together. But it's more than anything, it's about bringing information, understanding, and action. And thank you, Miss Barbara Irwin, for coming on so we can talk. But please introduce yourself.
Yes, I am Barbara Arnwine. I'm an attorney, and I head up the Transformative Justice Coalition, which is a national racial justice organization that concentrates on voting rights, economic justice, gender justice, has a real strong focus on youth leadership development, policing and criminal justice reform, and of course, international human rights. And environmental justice also is one of our big areas. And we, of course, for this year, 2020, have been concentrating significantly on voting rights, because what else is more determinative in this moment? I mean, all the suffering we're going through, behind COVID-19, all the economic, critical problems that we're having are all related to the vote. And it is time for us to get the vote on. So it's my joy to be here. For 25 years, I was the executive director and president of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and the Law. And many people know me in that role. And it is my pleasure. Thank you so much, Dr. Dyer, for having me.
You said a mouthful, but when you start talking about rights, I know people are pulling out their hair like, you don't got no, what rights is this? Before we get into that, and we have to put out a disclaimer. I did not call you on wardrobe, did I?
No.
Okay, so this is just by chance, because people have to say, Dr. Paul, did you call Barbara and ask? No, we did not schedule wardrobe together. This was a random synergy pick. It must have been.
It absolutely is, because I went to my closet and said, what's pretty that I can put on that will look good to the audience? And that's what I did. Uh-oh.
So, when it comes to information, Barbara, when it comes to law, we have a thing about perception, don't we?
Yes.
Why, first of all, can you answer that? Why is the law in more perception than understood? Because there's a difference. There's a huge difference between understanding law and perceiving the law.
Well, first of all, it's because of the way that the law has been used against us.
Okay.
When you consider that the Constitution of this country and most of the law in this country has been developed to protect property and property rights, and the fact that African Americans were held in this country as chattel property, the law has never been our friend. To begin with, because most of the laws that were passed basically to regulate chattel property and to keep us, therefore, under in a subhuman, quote, condition. And that's why when you look at the Constitution, it talks about 3/5 of a man for purposes of the vote. You look at the Constitution, it talks about, runaway, whatever, basically the right for people to have their property returned. But you notice that when you go through that document, a couple of words you're never gonna find: Africans, a couple of words you're never gonna find: slaves, a couple words you're not going to find: slavery, because they knew how immoral the actions were that they were taking, that they totally used euphemisms, that is, little nice words to try to avoid telling the truth. And so the Constitution itself is not a truth-telling document. And then all the other laws that were passed subsequent to it are horrific. And in fact, the law as such for Africans in America don't become favorable literally, until, even though you have the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendments, they are not construed in our favor by the Supreme Court. And it's going to take us until another century to get into the 1950s to start really seeing major positive legal decisions. There are a couple here and there, because I teach, constitutional law, I teach civil rights law, I teach comparative constitutional law across nations. But one thing that I can tell you is that even though you got a couple of cases here and there, Sweat versus Painter and all the rest of them in the 40s, it's really the 50s with Brown versus Board that you see the first significant, groundbreaking change in the law, but still the law is not consistent. In the 70s, you get horrible decisions out of this court. Now you still get terrible decisions from the court because the law has been about one thing, and our people understand it. That's called power. Right. Those who have power interpret the law.
And that's where we get the interpretation of law. It's also that interpretation is often misunderstood.
Yes.
So now let's talk about the civil rights and civil liberties. Do you find people get that like a ping pong match and it's not the same?
No, people really get confused. I mean, there's civil rights, right, which is what's enshrined in the Constitution that allegedly gives individuals different protections. It's what they call negative rights, rights that can't be infringed by the states, mainly, and rights that can't be infringed by the federal power. Then you have what we call civil rights, which is about economic rights, right? And we don't talk enough about that at all in our community, but civil rights is very important. And then you have, the whole, framework of human rights, the whole framework of civil liberties. Now, civil liberties, once again, is very much like civil rights in the sense that it is, entitlements that you have, affirmative entitlements, like you have a freedom of speech. No state can infringe that speech. Again, that's a negative, right. And there are people who are libertarians, meaning that they're all about their, quote, civil liberties, their right to bear arms, their right to assemble, their right to have minimum government in their mind. All these other things that they assert is their rights under civil liberties. And so they're libertarians. And then there are right-wing libertarians, and there are leftists, middle grounder libertarians. And then you have those who basically are talking about civil rights. So there's a whole different set of different realities, but those nuances count. Because when you look at the court right now, people are saying, well, what in the world is Roberts doing? He's voting favorably on DACA and the rights of, people who are living here, but then he votes negatively on this. And look at Gorsuch. What in the world is Gorsuch about? They're libertarians, people. These are not, your traditional conservatives. They're conservative libertarians. And that's why they rule the way they do. That's why they're not the same as Alito or Thomas, because they come from a different ideological wing of the right. So you have to understand that even though things may look one way, that there are differences based on ideological perspectives.
So, when it comes, and I think, thank you, Barbara, for just really touching on that and being a legal profession and actually you having to break through the weeds
all the time
of the language. Because remember, I always tell people law is a language that's not often spoken in public, right? So if you go to a different country and don't understand the nuances of the language, you're going to always misinterpret. I guarantee you. So having you on is not only a blessing, but I also want to be one point in particular, because I don't want to talk about, because Blacks have been misunderstood in law, in the
Yes.
legal, in the documents. We've never been included in, we've been actually excluded out purposely. So besides all that, how can someone help themselves with not misinterpreting? I don't want people to fall into a trap of, I know my rights. When it's not about your rights, they are trampling over. It's probably about your liberties.
Mhm.
It's not about your right. So,
well, people need to understand that the law is counterintuitive. A lot of things that people hear and think about the law, they think it should be one way, but it's actually the opposite. So it's very important. One thing that I say to our people all the time is, if you're really sick, you're going to eventually take yourself to a doctor if you want to get well.
right.
If you're trying to live and you want abundant life, you're going to go to a doctor at some point. But we look at the law all the time and we want it to say what we think it ought to be. And we don't like to talk to lawyers. We don't like to study the law. I mean, it's a problem. We don't want to pay lawyers. We don't want to consult with them. And of course, there are, people in any profession who aren't great and aren't the best. But I am always stunned by people who come to me and show me, these outrageous infringements or losses of property even. And then I say, well, what happened?
Yeah.
And they never got a lawyer. Never got a lawyer to go with them into court to fight for their rights under the law, for whatever entitlements they may have under law. So it is important, people, to, understand your lane. You don't want me in an operating room.
Right.
There's nothing I'm going to do right in that operating room. I'm not even going to get the gloves on right, doctor. I'm not going to do none of this right. But what you do want is, you want a surgeon in that room. And when you're talking about the law, you need a lawyer in the room. And you can go to paralegal courses. You can study street law. There's some great, courses out there. And some of this is online. I think it's very important for people to self-educate. And some people, if you've been noticing when it comes to these videos, they've been doing a great job of saying, I know that in my state, I'm allowed to video the police. I can do it X, Y, I have the right of this. So that's great, because you can teach. And I'm all supportive for clinics. I'm all supportive for those mechanisms. But I do want to say to people, there are some things that are complex in the law. Guess what? We lawyers, what do? We get lawyers when we have complex legal issues. I'm dealing right now with a copyright issue, and I'm not a copyright lawyer, even though I'm a darn good, at the top of my field, right, in civil rights and in human rights. But when it comes to copyright, that's not my baby. So I have to talk to another lawyer. I hire lawyers to help my situations. So don't ever, be afraid, because nobody's born knowing the law. The law is so contorted, it's so distorted, it's so illogical. In many ways, it's so counterintuitive. It's not straightforward the way it should be. So I don't blame people from being like, how could that be possible? How could they mistreat me, come into my house, tear up my house, and I have to pay if they took me by ambulance? If they beat me, I got to pay for my ambulance.
Right.
How's that possible? So there are these things that are, contorted. And I think it's so hard. It's so important that people understand that. Don't be afraid of the law.
I think that's what it is. I think, I've been having these mental health forums. I've been having these Healthy Black Men forums. I love having informational forums. But here's the thing we know about mental health and about getting help, is that Blacks in the community has a stigma of, one, raising their hand for help and getting professional help.
Right.
But we also know there's kind of like, we're not too sure if we can trust it.
That's
So,
right.
so we have this um, 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 inhibition to like go to an attorney because I might get screwed over. I might
Right.
go to mental health and now I lose my job. And there's a lot of, animosity that we have with these professions. And I truly want to break this barrier because it only holds us back because we know very little collectively. I'm not talking about the individuals, but I'm talking collectively, the mob knows very little. So
Yes.
how do we get past that?
Well, we gotta, there's a lot of things we've been teaching ourselves to do differently, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And that's the beauty about Black people, is that it's our resiliency, our flexibility, our ability to turn on a dime. We didn't know what a TikTok was a year ago. We all got it down now. Hey, a number of years ago, you couldn't say it, the word, Facebook to half of us, and now we Facebooking like crazy. We tweeting, we doing all kind of stuff. I mean, we can teach ourselves skills. Just like we taught ourselves for decades, different dances, different songs, different ways of praising. I mean, we are flexible people, and it's very important for us to understand that in this time, that old methodologies may only work so well. Right. New methodologies are required, and new ways of protest. I was so pleased when I looked up, after COVID, and I saw BLM Chicago, Black Lives Matter Chicago, doing a car caravan protest. I said, okay, that's right. You don't want to be out there yelling at each other and getting COVID on each other. So we got cars now, and we're driving around doing our protests in the cars. I mean, we have to be adaptable. And one thing that I do understand is that most of the systems, most of the professions that have existed have been used against us. White structural racism. We live in a white structural racist society. It has only two goals. One is to advantage whites in every possible way. Its second goal is to subordinate and disadvantage all others. And that's our reality. So it doesn't surprise me that we have some of this, but we got to also be smart enough that when you see Barbara Arnwine coming, I'm there for you.
Now, Barbara, when you say those 2 points,
yes,
and you've gotten the pushback of how can you say that?
I can say it.
Right.
Because it's factual.
It is factual, but so how can we help explain to people who don't understand the facts, or is it you think they don't want to believe in the fact, or is it their perception to negate the fact? Because there seems to be they're not getting it. It seems like we keep explaining it over and over. We show them the numbers, we show them the statistics, we show them the historical things, and then it's like, okay, but it's time to move forward. But this is systematic. This is a part of the system that either needs to be changed or move. That's what I'm asking.
Well, I accept that there are certain people you can't educate.
Okay.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
These 25% who are just, you ask them right now, if you and I made up a race, let's say we're going to call them the Telelites. And we ask them, are they intelligent? No, they'll say. You ask them, are they lazy? Yes. You ask them, are they patriotic? No. You ask them, all these, they will come up with every negative stereotype, because if it's not white, that's what they think. And that's the reality of, our situation. That's why Trump he can always, in any given day, he's got 20 to 25% of this population who's going to believe anything he says, as long as he wraps it in a white power flag, white power bow. They're going to believe it. And because that's what they believe America was founded as a white nation to make them great as white people. And they're mad. They're so angry about anybody else getting power, anybody else demanding justice, anybody else going to it. You know, racism, people got to understand, racism is not just individualistic. That's a huge mistake. People always want to talk about the few bad apples and all of this and the few people who don't get it. No, no, no. Racism is structural, which means, and it's organic. And anything organic, what does it do? If you're organic, you're about reproduction, right?
Right.
About reproducing yourself, but you're also about defending yourself. You will fight to the death to keep yourself alive. And racism, it's the same way. So when we're fighting structural racism, of course it's going to deny what it's doing. Of course it's going to try to find some Blacks who are going to validate it. Of course it's going to dissemble, appropriate, you know, paint Black Lives Matter on top of the building if they have to.
Right, right.
And then keep discriminating, right? And keep, you know, giving all the power to whites. I mean, you know, of course you're going to do these things because that's what an organism does to survive. Is going to always transmute, adapt, and do all kinds of things. So don't be surprised, people. I mean, don't sit up there and say, well, what happens? Remember, Black progress in this country has never been linear. It has never gone from one point to one point, from one bad to one good. It's never been that way. We've always had a zig and a zag. You know, we make some progress, there's a backlash. We make some progress, there's another backlash. Sometimes you could be in the zig and the zag at the exact same moment. And if you think I'm wrong, remember 2008, Obama wins. And people say, oh my God, Black president, amazing progress, amazing progress. That next day, McConnell and all kinds of people are meeting saying we're going to destroy his power. And we're going to do everything we can to suppress the vote. Also, you can be in the zig and the zag at the same time.
So let's talk about the vote, because that's huge.
Yes.
And I've worked on campaigns for years, and it bothers me to no end. The day of an election, I'll knock on someone's door. It's the day. And they'll look at me dead in my face and go, what? And I'm like, you're voting today? Voting for who? And I'm like, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. You know, there are in this country of the eligible adults who are able to vote, 51 million people are unregistered. And that ain't all Black folks, right? We're not just, you know what I'm saying? That's not us. That's not just us. There are 6 to 8 million African Americans who are unregistered, who should be registered like yesterday. There are 13 to 17 million people in this country who have a felony record, who are eligible to vote now. But they're totally confused about it because in too many states they have restrictions and they don't want to go to jail because they make a mistake. So those people don't register. They don't even try to vote because they don't want to end up back in jail because they don't have the correct information. That's where, quote, knowing these rights is important. Mm-hmm. That's where people need to, you know, have the correct information, and that's why that is so critical and so necessary.
But we're not, and so we have.
Can you hold 1 second? I'm so
absolutely
sorry.
Yeah.
I hear somebody at my front door. 1 minute.
So we're going to talk about why Barbara comes back, and one of the things, the reason why I have Barbara on here in Bridges Live is so we can get people to understand there's a fight for survival or a fight for living, and if you don't know that you have a choice to fight to live, and you always think you're on survival mode, then you're going to lose out.
Yes.
You're going to lose out because you are so far behind just trying to survive. We need to understand we have We've always had, as people, Black people, a nation of people, the nation of humanity has a place to live in glory.
Yes.
But you have to put in the work to do it. Otherwise, then you're always surviving. And that's some of the things that I don't think people understand the difference between living and surviving. That's why I teach the living sciences. People say, well,
Well,
Dr. Paul, what do you do? I teach the living sciences. It's about living. It's not about surviving.
well, also, you know, in our tradition, it's been about surviving, living, and excelling, because we want to excel also. You know, we
Yes.
want to rise above, we want to transcend. You know, Dr. King wasn't just about, you know, being a good preacher. He wanted to be an exceptional preacher. And that's how he became one. One of the best orators, you know, of an entire century. You know, that's because that was his goal. He studied he studied the masters. He studied the best writers, the best speakers. He went after it. He practiced. LeBron James is so good at playing basketball because he studied, he practices, he works out, he does that. You know, anything that you want to be good at in this country, period, in life, anything that you want to be good at, you can excel at if you really apply yourself. And really, you know, take it to the maximum degree. You turn out that, hey, you know, like Valerie Simpson. You know, Valerie Simpson's a great, you know, songwriter. She and Nick Ashford wrote all these amazing songs that everybody sings, and don't necessarily know they wrote them. But one day she stepped out and said, "I want to sing. You know, I got a voice." And so she used it. Or you can look at T.D. Jakes. T.D. Jakes could play the piano, but you never see him playing, because he knows that he's a better preacher than he is a pianist. So you have to really figure out, where do I excel? And when it comes to the vote, let me bring it back to the vote.
Yeah.
What I want to say to everybody right now is that every single one of us have to get up every day and do something new. And that is look in the mirror and say, I am a voting rights champion. And I'm going to be one through November 3rd. That's who I am. In this moment, I am Professor this, or I am Mom that, or I am Dad X, but I'm also a voting rights champion. And that means that I'm going to worry the hell out of everybody I know to make sure that they are ready to vote. That means that I'm going to support people. I'm going to make sure that I can take people to the polls, give them rides. I'm going to call people. My mother at 89 gets up on election day and she calls at least 20 people. She starts at 5 in the morning.
Somebody.
She calls at 5 in the morning from her bed. She gets that phone, and like she tells me, she doesn't want a smartphone. She wants a dumb phone. Because she can't get on the internet and do all that. But she will call every one of my brothers and sisters and some of her grandchildren, and she's going to say the following: are you going to vote today? You know that it's voting day. Then she'll say, and what time are you going to vote? Where do you know where you're going to vote? No, I don't want to hear that. I want you to take a moment, because Grandma's going to stay on the phone and you're going to call me back, because I want to know just when you're going to vote and where. And what you mean you don't have a ride? Well, why don't we wait? You call, get so-and-so on the other line and tell them to come pick you up. I mean, she does that. That's how she operates. And we all can be a Vera. That's my mom's name. We all can have that capacity to make a difference. Remember, the most powerful woman in Alabama in 2017 during the Senator Doug Jones race was a Black woman who said to the media, she said, I don't have a college degree. I don't have a high school degree. She said, but I had a car and I had some gas money. And she took 100 people to the polls. That's who we got to be. Voting rights champions.
You know, and I am going to leave off on that. I'm going to have you back on later. I know you're a busy woman. I know this is just a time that this is because I believe this is our new revolution.
Yes.
I really believe this is our new revolution. And I think the problem, what we had as Black people, as a nation of people, is that we sat back and we crossed our arms after, and we were like, oh, we're good now. Oh, we don't have to move forward. And they put it, so we have to be, like you said, we have to be a champion on voting, and we've missed out on judges. I don't want to. That's a whole other conversation.
Yes, it
Man,
is.
that's a great. Because the judicial branch.
Yes.
Wow.
That
That's
man
all I
has
got to
appointed
say.
200 conservative anti-civil rights judges. 200. Half of them
200.
can't even say that the vote that Brown versus Board was correctly decided. These are racist, bad, anti-civil rights judges. So everything counts. You know, don't be sitting up there and letting people trick bag you, talking about their vote doesn't count. Of course it counts. It counts for every single thing you do every day. When you turn on a light bulb, somebody decided who's going to regulate that utility. When you turn on the water in the morning, somebody's decided how much you're going to pay for that water and how it's going to be available and what's going to be in it. When you walk out your door and you turn on your car, somebody's decided how your car is regulated, how you get your license. When you walk on the street, somebody's decided how that street is going to be paved or not paved. When you drive, every light you hit, all of that is regulated by government. When you go shopping, everything you buy has a price on it and you pay a tax or you don't based on the law. Come on, folks, everything that you do. Don't be telling me about, I got my freedom and so on and so on. If you're on the internet, that's also regulated by somebody. You know, everything you do. So don't tell me about my vote doesn't count. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you. Education, everything, housing, everything that we're talking about. Where are you getting jobs? Are you seeing jobs in your neighborhood? That also has a lot to do with who's sitting in those positions. Economic development, what's being built. Don't tell me it doesn't have anything to do with you. It does. It has everything to do with you.
So before we take off, I know we get some questions. You probably get a lot more. I live in this state. I live in that state. I live in this county. How do I get a hold of a Barbara who's going to be a champion that I can talk to, that they can steer me where I can go get those other professionals, those people, because love you, sister, but you're not everywhere.
Right. And one thing we're doing is that we're building cadres throughout the country. And we have what's called the Voting Rights Alliance. And we have hundreds of organizations and hundreds of individuals who belong to it. And people can become part of it by going to votingrightsalliance.org. votingrightsalliance.org. And you will find a sign-up sheet. And we put out newsletters, we put out information, and we're having a big symposium on August the 6th through the 8th, where we're going to be training people. So all those people who are listening and saying, yeah, I want to know about some voting rights law. Yes, I want to know about what's legal for felons and ex-felons and, you know, formerly incarcerated people, you know, returning citizens. I want to know what those rights are for my state. We're going to be training on all of that. We're going to be training on how to register people to vote, how to turn people out to vote, how to do the best voter education, the best messaging. So you want to join that. That's a summit that we're going to have. And you can become part of that by going to Eventbrite and putting in R March to Vote, R March to Vote.eventbrite.com. And that's how you can register for this summit. Or when you go to votingrightsalliance.org, it's on that page. The flyer is for how you can register. And frankly, everybody's saying, well, how much does it cost? Nothing, because we're about the work. I'm not about getting rich off of
Right.
my people's pain.
Yeah.
I am about making sure that,
Yeah.
that we are working together in unity and in collaboration to protect the maximum amount of people we can protect, that we can help and support and uplift. So absolutely go to votingrightsalliance.org and you're going to find that great information. Sign up for the summit, the August 6th. The reason why it's August 6th, everyone, is that that's the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah.
That's when that act became effective, 55 years ago. So we want you to be part of the celebration and then part of the training and strategy workshops. So yes, you can become connected to other people in your state. You can become empowered with great information, because we're going to have all kinds of materials available. This is no joke. This is not about a bunch of talking heads making themselves feel smart, good because they gave a great speech. This is about actual work and actual training and actual helping people out there who want to do the best they can do. So come on, my voting rights champions. Come on.
Will this be online because of the COVID
Yes, it's going to be
thing?
totally virtual.
Okay.
Totally virtual. It's going to be all online. That's the beauty of it. So you can be participating from Alabama, and your friends from California can be doing the same thing. It's going to be totally virtual, totally accessible, totally there. And we're going to have all kind of blocks for crazy folks who get up in there and try to make it difficult for others. We're going to take them out. They're not going to be there messing around. We're going to have a really good system. And we are so excited. We are going to have some inspiration. It's going to be a really good set of programs. And I'm so excited about it. And thank you for letting me get that in and let people know.
I'm excited because I know I want to be a part of it, and I'll talk to you more off air
yes,
about that,
please
all that stuff. But please get out and vote, get out and vote, get out and vote, get out and vote. And that's just really, and then we'll go from there. Understand, remember, there's a difference between perception and understanding, right?
Yes.
There's a difference between liberties and rights.
Yes.
So there's a difference between just information and understanding.
Yes.
And if you understand something, then you can actually put your life into a full action. And that's what we want. And I'm so glad, thank you, Barbara Arnwine, for coming on, Esquire, yourself. And we're going to take off here. We're going to wish everyone, thank you for joining Bridges Live here and this podcast. If you ever want to reach me, drpaulholisticscience.com. You know, you can always reach me, and thank you for your comments and blessings. And we're going to take our prayers. So if you want to join us in prayer, please bow your heads. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for bringing us together and allowing your words to be heard, allowing your hearts to be touched, allowing your soul to be risen above all else, because we know together with information and your name, we shall overcome. In Heavenly Father, in Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Really, thank you.
I will call you later, Miss Barbara.
Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry about the disruptions. Oh, my goodness.
Don't worry about it.
I'm sorry about that. And I didn't know anybody was going to be at the door.